Let's deal with another elephant in the room. IDAC consistency test. Why was the pilot not charged in that Medicare 24 large case with a lot of cops in it? There is a pilot problem. The pilot is none other than Lieutenant General Dr. Molefe Fani. I just love his nickname, the pilot. So today we are going to explore and get to know who the pilot is. He came from National Treasury to the Khan Said Network, to SAPS supply chain, to Medicare 24, to the IDAC consistency question. For years, these stories appeared to sit in separate boxes. The Khan intelligence leaks, the Said business network, the National Treasury procurement discussions, the SAPS tender scandals, the Matala Medicare 24 prosecution, the arrest of senior crime intelligence officers, the institutional war between SAPS and IDAC. All these things were separate stories in separate boxes. But the evidence now emerging at the Madlanga Commission forces a difficult question. What happens when in all of these different boxes, separate stories, the same people, the same access routes, the same institutional nodes begin appearing across these separate stories? At the center of one of the intersection sits a person very quietly by the name of Pilot. Before Lieutenant Dr. Molefe Fani entered the SAPS, he was already a senior procurement figure at the National Treasury. According to his own testimony, he served as a chief director responsible for transversal contracting, and during his final year in that office, he was acting chief procurement officer. That matters because at the Madlanga Commission, there is evidence that places the pilot inside the Khan Said story before he moved to the SAPS. The emerging chronology is therefore critical. Fani at National Treasury, senior procurement responsibilities, appears as pilot in Khan Said charts. Private commercial procurement opportunities discovered around the network. It appears in and around discussions involving the PPE, COVID masks, COVID test kits, Siberia Rules Engine Project, the MTN SMADA deals, Treasury linked procurement access, and a whole lot of things. The recurring route presented by the Commission is that private commercial interests via Mohammed Said to General Khan, then to Pilot. That is the first major point. Pilot did not first enter the story through Matala. Pilot appears much earlier whilst he was still in Treasury. The PPE evidence is important because it gives us a glimpse of how the network operated. The Madlanga Commission evidence includes messages in which Mohammed Said presses Major General Khan around PPE orders and senior contracts. The language includes, please tie up the pilot and Gen 1. And later, I need the PPE, please, brah. And please push Gen 1 and pilot. Khan then reports that he has followed up with Gen 1 and that Gen 1 would chase pilot. This matters because pilot is not appearing merely as a name in someone's contact list. It is architecture. private PPE interest via Mohammed Saeed to Khan and then to Gen 1. We still do not know who Gen 1 is. And then Pilot. The commission evidence, therefore, raises a direct question. What was Pilot being pushed to do? And why were private commercial actors seeking movement through Khan towards a senior treasury procurement figure? These are difficult questions and very direct that need to be answered. Various SMARTA and the rules engine shenanigans. This may be one of the most important parts of the entire Khan scandal. The material that was reviewed were meetings, contracts, treasury relationships, access to decision makers, a project discussed around 280 million and split 3 ways. Approximately each person was supposed to get 92.4 million. A proposed 3-way split, an unresolved question about the third beneficiary. This is where Pilot question becomes more and more and more serious, because the issue is no longer simply, did Dr. Fani know Khan or did Fani know Said? The issue becomes, what role, if any, did Pilot play in a network where private actors were discussing state-linked commercial opportunities, facilitation, structures, and potentially enormous financial shares? And the unresolved question remains, who was the third beneficiary? Because the commission suspects that it was Pilot. Madlanga Commission material raises serious questions about participation of Pilot, access via Pilot, facilitation, commercial positioning, proposed percentages, potential benefit. That is prima facie issue requiring explanation. Now, the wider story changes. For a long time, the public question has been, how are civilians obtaining confidential crime intelligence and SAPS information? There are numerous examples involving civilians possessing information that should not be circulating publicly. Names in broader public controversy include people like Brown Muhotsi, the white lady in parliament, Fidel Adams. All these civilians are running around with intelligence-linked materials in their hands. And then the Madlanga Commission presents the Khan evidence. And the evidence leaders do not merely show Khan talking socially to civilians. They present alleged flaws of internal documents, crime intelligence material, case information, case numbers, complainant information, addresses, internal procurement decisions, state information into private networks. That creates a possible leakage architecture. That is state information from senior police intelligence nodes to private intermediaries. And suddenly, an older statement becomes more important. Do you recall the evidence concerning Brown Muhotsi telling Lieutenant General Kwananzi the words that effect General Khan is going to update you? That statement now deserves to be revisited against the commission's evidence, because General Khan is no longer merely a mysterious general somewhere in the background and just being picked on. The commission has now presented a detailed alleged pattern of General Khan moving information and access through private relationships. Then comes the career move. Dr. Fani Molefe, or he is a lieutenant general, by the way, leaves the National Treasury. On his own testimony, he joins SAPS August 1st, 2022. He does not enter as a junior official. He does not spend decades rising through the SAP ranks. He enters as a lieutenant general and takes the position as a divisional commissioner, supply chain management. This is the continuity point that cannot simply be ignored. In 2021, Pilot appears in Khan Said's procurement story while still at the National Treasury. In 2022, Pilot moves to the SAPS and takes control of the entire supply chain of this institution. At the rank of Lieutenant General, the legitimate public question is, was Fani's prior relationship with Khan known when he was appointed into this position? And was his appearance in private procurement-related discussions known at that time? Who hired him into this position? What conflicts or relationships were disclosed when he was appointed into this position? Now remember, I said there are several stories that appear in different boxes and they seem not to be connected. One of those stories, the BMW mechatronics appointment. Deck's case is not simple that she was an outsider. That correction is important. According to the clippets of the case file, IDAC alleges panel manipulation, misrepresentation of the candidate's skills and experience, improper evaluation, false and or misleading information, vetting irregularities, improper security clearance, and ultimately employment as alleged gratification. The court documents allege that accused 1 to 6 acted in concert to give accused number 7 a gratification in form of employment. That is the IDAC story. But then comes the explanation given by Lieutenant General Kumalo. As you recall in his evidence, TSS required rare technical expertise combining fields such as mechanical systems, computer science, engineering, automation, and integrated system. The correct field is called mechatronics. In Lieutenant General Kumala's explanation, was that people with this combination of expertise are not necessarily found conventionally within the policing ranks. They are often found in advanced industrial environments. For example, Toyota, Ford, BMW, and other automotive manufacturers. This is an essential point. If you need this kind of specialized technical capabilities, you go where the capabilities exist. That is why, on his explanation, recruitment from BMW was not evidence of corruption. It was evidence of a search for a scarce expertise. Whether the process was manipulated remains a question for the criminal court, but the distinction is fundamental. Outside the recruitment was not itself the crime. The state must prove the alleged manipulation. So we're going to see where this case will end, but clearly it doesn't look good for IDAC. This is where the latest point changes the story significantly. According to the sequence, the SAPS members accused in relation to this appointment were criminally charged. They were suspended by their employer, SAPS, subjected to internal disciplinary proceedings, cleared through the employer process, then returned to work. The institutional question becomes unavoidable. SAPS is not a random outsider. SAPS is the employer, the institution whose rules were allegedly violated, the custodian of HR records, the custodian of panel records, the custodian of the scoring, the custodian of appointment process, the custodian of the relevant national instructions. So if the SAPS subjected its own members to its disciplinary proceedings and did not sustain wrongdoing against them, the public is entitled to ask, what evidence does IDAC have that the employer does not have? That does not automatically invalidate the criminal prosecution. A disciplinary case and a criminal prosecution involve different standards and legal tests. We know that. But is it highly relevant? Now, the two stories side by side. The BMW mechatronics specialist, rare technical expertise alleged required external recruiting, specialists from an automotive industry, brigadier level appointment, state alleges process is manipulated, senior officials were criminally charged, SAPS suspended the accused employees, internal disciplinary process clears them back to work. Now let's compare that to Lieutenant General Dr. Molefe Fani, the pilot. He's a senior procurement official at the National Treasury, appears as pilot in the Khan Sayed organized crime activities. Private commercial opportunities being discussed around that network, leaves the National Treasury, joins the SAPS in August 2022, enters at a rank of Lieutenant General, takes control of the supply chain management. The question is not why was pilot allowed to come from outside the SAPS? That is not the question. That will be inconsistent with the defense of the mechatronics specialist. The question is, was pilot's appointment and background subjected to comparable scrutiny? If investigators, if the IDAC investigators asked who recruited the BMW specialist, who sat at the panel, who scored her, what did her CV say, what experience did she have, what was she vetted properly, did she qualify for clearance, were her relationships disclosed, was employment a gratification, then the same institutional seriousness demands questions about the pilot. Who recruited Fani into the SAPS? Who appointed him? Was the post advertised? What was the post number? Who sat in the panel? Who scored him? Who vetted him? What security clearance was required for this position? Because this is a senior position. What relationships did he disclose? Did he disclose his relationship with Khan Sayed network? Were his appearances in the Khan Sayed chats known at that time? Were any potential procurement conflicts of interest examined? That is not an accusation. It is the same forensic checklist that applies to the BMW specialist. Approximately 2 years after pilot moved into the SAPS supply chain management, the Medicare 24 procurement starts unfolding. The chronology we have been working with is in 2024, the SAPS healthcare procurement process starts. and then the Medicare 24 bids, and then the Medicare 24 was awarded to Maclala. The state brought the allegations include fraud, corruption, money laundering, misrepresentations, gratification, and pilot. According to the ad hoc evidence that we heard, he led the SAPS management. He chaired the BAC of this Medicare 24. He signed the Medicare 24 contract. He later accepted that the tender should not be awarded. Yet Pilot was not among those that were charged. That fact does not prove protection, but it demands explanation. Why is it that all of these cops were charged, and then we jump and then we charge the national commissioner? In between sits Fani, the pilot. He is not charged. The Maclala story has increasingly been framed around compromised police officials. The public heard about the CATS cops, senior police officers, alleged gratification to Rachel Macheng, procurement corruption, criminal networks, institutional compromise. Multiple officers were arrested and charged in a wider matter, including the National Commissioner. But the procurement official at the center of the formal supply chain management structure, the BAC chair, the contract signatory, the man now identified in the Madanga Commission as Pilot, is not charged. So the proper question is, why was Pilot not treated as part of the alleged compromised COP architecture? Perhaps there is a valid evidential answer. So the public deserves to hear it. This is where I begin to rant, because it becomes a legitimate institutional analysis. The question is not, why didn't IDAC arrest anyone? That is not the question. We don't have a problem with IDAC's arrest. That would be irresponsible for us to even say that. The question is, what threshold did IDAC apply? In the Dineo Mokwele case appointment process, the panel conduct, the candidates' qualifications, CV, vetting, everything were sufficient to produce a major criminal prosecution. Yet in the Medicare 24 environment, Pilot, who is the head of supply chain management of the SAPS, he also chaired the BAC. Pilot signed the Medicare 24 contract between SAPS and Ket Maclala. The tender is later alleged to be fraudulent and is corrupt. The award should not have been. Now, Pilot appears earlier in Khan Said procurement-related charts. Was Pilot investigated? When? By who? Was he interviewed as a suspect or witness? Did they even get a statement from him? Were his devices examined? Were his finances examined? Were his chain contacts examined? Were his Said contacts examined? Did IDAC know about Pilot in the first place? If it knew, what did it do? If it did not know, why did the IDAC not know? That is the consistency test. Let's place this inside the institutional conflict between IDAC and SAPS. In my previous recording, I went into detail about this IDAC SAPS war, which I'm not going to go into right now. However, the question is, in this IDAC and SAPS who is connected to who, through what acts, for whose benefit. So now we ask, what did IDAC know about Khan? When did it know it? Did it examine this Khan Said network? We are no longer looking at one isolated tender. We have three systems colliding. The first system is the Khan Said network, where in that network we have intelligence leakages, private businessmen conniving with senior officers, case information, procurement access, political conduits, commercial opportunities that lead into system number two, the pilot procurement at National Treasury. Kaid Said Khan charts moves to the SAPS and gets one of the highest senior ranks as Lieutenant General, and is now controlling the procurement department there. He chairs the BAC, and he awarded the Medicare 24 contract. Now we go to the third bucket, where we have IDAC SAPS conflict there. Inside that conflict, we have arrest, criminal prosecutions of Lieutenant General Kumalo and his team. We have Matlala, the Cats Corps that are accused along with him, institutional warfare, questions of consistency, and pilot sits at an uncomfortable intersection between these three buckets. The final question is, was Pilot investigated in the same aggression? And beneath that, did IDAC know who Pilot was? Did IDAC know what Khan and Said network charts? Did IDAC investigate the earlier procurement network? Did IDAC examine Pilot's financial interest? Did IDAC examine his relationship with General Khan and Said? And if they didn't, why not? The commission has changed the question. Pilot is no longer merely an official who chaired a committee and signed a fraudulent contract. He now appears in an earlier procurement access story involving Khan and Said before moving from Treasury. That does not prove that he is guilty. That's not what I'm saying. But it makes the absence of a visible, equally aggressive investigation impossible to ignore. The employer tested the crime intelligence case. The commission exposed the Khan network. McClellan's case exposed SAPMS procurement. Pilot appears in the intersection of all of these things. So who is going to investigate Pilot?